Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 Gasparilla Bowl matchup between the Wake Forest Demon Deacons and the Missouri Tigers. Two teams with very different storylines heading into this matchup. You got Wake Forest to finish out the regular season at 7-5, and it's been an interesting season for Wake Forest. This team had some high expectations heading into the 2022 season, probably as high of expectations as we've ever seen out of Wake Forest. Many were projecting the Demon Deacons to get up to 10 wins this season. So for them to finish out at 7 and also lose 4 of their last 5 maybe has been a disappointing season down the stretch for Wake Forest. But they're taking on Missouri in this matchup, which, kind of a different storyline. Missouri, a few weeks ago, looked as if Missouri's bowl hopes were gone. This team was 2-4 at one point this season, but they played well down the stretch, and here we are. We got Wake Forest facing off against Missouri. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with the team trends. Wake Forest lost to Duke to finish out the regular season. 31-34 was the final score. So obviously losing to Duke in football is not a good thing, but Duke's actually had a good season. They got up to 8 wins. One of the surprise teams you could say of the season, as they, believe it or not, had a better record than Wake Forest this season. But so Wake Forest 7-5. They have lost 4 of their last 5. Their one win during that period was against Syracuse. As for Missouri, they beat Arkansas 29-27, 6-6 on the season. Once again, played really well down the stretch for Missouri to win 4 of their last 6 and make a run to get up to that 6-win threshold. And here we are. It's a huge opportunity for them. Games to be on Friday, December 23rd in Tampa, Florida. Your kickoff is 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Wake Forest by 1. So this game is expected to be probably as close as it gets, and I can totally see why. You got two teams on different trends. I mean, one team you could say is probably thought of to be more talented than the other, but the other team, which is Missouri, has been playing really well down the stretch. Over under 60.5, and the FPI is going with Wake Forest 59.4%. This is also the first matchup between Wake Forest and Missouri in their histories. Stat comparison for this one, Wake Forest is 15th in points per game. This is a strong offensive team. We knew it was going to be that way heading to the season with Sam Hartman coming back, who has actually had a good season. He's put up 3,400 yards, 35 touchdowns, 11 picks. So he's had a good season. He's thrown a few picks, which ideally that number of turnovers could be lower. But you also got a really talented receiver in A.T. Perry, who's received nearly 1,000 yards on the season and 11 touchdowns. He'll probably reach over 1,000 in this matchup. I mean, the thing is, though, for Wake Forest is the defensive side of the ball. Defensively, this team has struggled and they've been very inconsistent down the stretch. They're allowing an average of 29 points a game. I mean, you look at how this team played down the stretch. You allowed 48 to Louisville, allowed 30 to NC State, allowed 36 to North Carolina, allowed 34 to Duke, and you beat Syracuse, but you still allowed 35 points to them. So defensively, it's been an issue for Wake Forest this season, and that's a main concern heading into this matchup. But a really strong passing game here. You got Sam Hartman. That's definitely a given. They're a top 10 team in passing offense. They're 72nd in rushing offense. And then for passing defense, they're 127th. This team is allowing an average of 273 pass yards a game, which is definitely an issue. And then they're 46th in rushing defense. As for Missouri, this team is 82nd in points per game, 54th in points allowed. This team is a somewhat strong defensive team. They're not quite in the top 50, but they're allowing an average of 25 points a game, which isn't bad considering the brutal conference that they're in. And then they're 94th in pass yards a game, 74th in rush yards. And then for yards allowed, they're in the top 40 in both areas, 39th in passing, 32nd in rushing. So that pass defense, that defensive secondary, definitely going to need to show up here for Mizzou if they want any chance of winning this one, going up against Sam Hartman, who is, an outstanding quarterback. Recent matchups, Wake Forest lost to Duke. We mentioned that, 31-34, beat Syracuse by 10. They lost to North Carolina, lost to NC State in that blowout against Louisville. That one was ugly, 21-48. And as for Missouri, they beat Arkansas 29-27, beat New Mexico State 45-14, lost to Tennessee 24-66, got blown out there. Lost to Kentucky by 4, but kept it competitive, and then beat South Carolina 23-10. That was before South Carolina got on their hot streak and beat Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks. I mean, the SEC's been quite a wild conference this season. And if you look before that, Missouri beat Vanderbilt. That was their fourth win in their last 6 games. And I mean, you look at it now, Vanderbilt finished out the season at 5-7. Vanderbilt would have won that game. There's a good chance that they would have been in a bowl game this season, which is definitely something that it would have been very unexpected. But even for Missouri, this team was 2-4 at one point this season. It looked like their chances of making a bowl were gone, but they definitely played well down the stretch, and you got to give them credit for that. Key points for this one: Wake Forest 7-5. This team is offensively, they're good enough to be a contender, big ACC contender for that matter. I mean, I mentioned this before, but the ACC, I mean, it was a wide open conference this season. Clemson, I mean, they deserved to win the conference in the end, but I mean, otherwise, you had Florida State had a good season. North Carolina and Pitt both were pretty good. Duke turned out to be 8-4, but Wake Forest, I mean, it looked like this was going to be the season, especially after last year when Pitt won the conference. Clemson was kind of down. It looked like 2022 could have been their year, and in the end, it just wasn't. It was kind of disappointing down the stretch. But I mean, this is still a talented team here. I mean, this team is experienced, and they've got the talent to be a contender. Just didn't fall that way. And defensively, once again, that was a big issue for this team, and they lost 4 of their last 5 because of it. Missouri, after starting 2-4, they finished 6-6 defensively. They've kept many games close. It's kind of an opposite situation for the Tigers. This team on defense has kept a lot of games close. You look back, I mean, they really never forced a big upset this season. They kept it close against Georgia. That was probably the closest that they got. That was back on October 1st. Georgia, #1 team in the country. They kept it close. They were leading late there. I remember watching that score, and I was like, man, Missouri could pull that off. But Georgia ended up winning it by 4. But either way, they still kept it close against a really talented Georgia team. And, I mean, if you look at some of these other losses, I mean, they got blown out to K-State back in week 2, which was ugly. But they went in overtime, lost to Auburn, lost to Florida by a touchdown, lost to Kentucky by 4. All 3 of those losses were close. There were 4 of them. Yeah, 4 of those losses were close. So, I mean, even if you flip 2 of those around, this Missouri team is suddenly 8-4. I mean, this team is trending upward heading into the future, and they haven't won a bowl game since 2014. So this is a good opportunity to get back on the right track. And, I mean, win this game. You're 7-6 on the season. That's definitely a good stepping stone to look forward to 2023. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Wake Forest and Mizzou coming up here in the Gasparilla Bowl. And I'll be going with Missouri to win this one. 31-27 is my predicted final score. This one is actually a pretty intriguing matchup here. I mean, once again, you mentioned the storylines and the trends of both teams. Wake Forest is probably the more experienced, the more talented team in this matchup. But the way that both teams have played down the stretch, Missouri, I feel like, is going to put up a fight here. I mean, they fought to get up to 6 wins. They didn't give up after they were 2-4, and I feel like in this matchup they're going to have that energy. And I mean, I like Brady Cook and this offense to score some points. And even though, I mean, the defensive side of the ball is going to be crucial for Missouri, and if they can hold Wake Forest to the teens or even low 20 in points, I think they've got a good chance, especially considering Wake Forest defense has allowed a lot of points this season. So, I got Mizzou here, 31-27. I'll say 55% towards Missouri, over under 60.5. I'll take the under for this one, and Missouri to cover the spread in the end. But I will say this: if you think Wake Forest is going to win this game, I'd probably take the over, just because Wake Forest offense, there's a good chance that they could score upwards of 30-40 if they win this one. And defensively, I don't trust Wake Forest to have a strong defensive game, considering how they've played down the stretch. So definitely keep that in mind. But I'm going to be taking Missouri, so I will be taking the under for this one, and also them to cover the spread in the end. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.